Hey y'all, it's Sarah. Just fair warning, I'm still sounding a little nasally and kind of stuffy there. So I'll try to be as clear as possible when I'm going through this, but I am working on some Halloween frame art, and I wanted to use some of these wooden Dollar Tree pieces that I couldn't resist having, and now I want to be able to do something with them. So while I was doing these, I thought that I would share this with you, and we could kind of craft these together if you wanted to. I'm going to try to get as many of these done in one video as I can, and let me really quickly run through some things I'm going to be using. So one of the things that I'm going to be using, of course, is some of the wooden Dollar Tree little Halloween cutouts. I used this little ghost, and I used a package of actually just one of these wooden ghosts. I've got the Halloween words that have the haunted, spooky, and beware. I'm going to be using spooky and haunted. I've got a little bit of Dollar Tree spackling so I can fill in my ghost there. A sanding block. Of course, you guys know I'm going to be using foam core, and the foam core that I'm going to be using is some scraps. And these are scraps that I have been playing with my new V-Groove tool. If you guys have not checked out that video for the cool tools, the foam core cutting tools, definitely check that out. There are tools on there. They are worth looking into if this is something that you really want to play and really dive into the rabbit hole like I have. This is a really cool tool to have. I got this one at Hobby Lobby. There's a whole video about these guys. And so in playing with this thing and practicing with this thing, and really quick, you can see what it does. It cuts grooves into your foam core, and this is just readi-board brand that I'm using. And you can see it just barely nips out that surface. And it allows you to change the depth so you can go a little further in. This I barely did. So I had some practice pieces that I had played with, and they are not perfect. You can see this one's not perfect. I'm going to try to still use either all of this piece or cut this down and use part of this piece. But I wanted to use up these scraps. I didn't want them to go to waste, even though they're not perfect, and I was using them for practice. If you don't have the V-Groove tool, you can always just cut some strips down. You can see these are just strips cut down and applied to a solid backer and spaced out a little bit to kind of give that same shiplap look. I'm going to be using mine as straight up white today. I've got a whole bunch of scraps here. These are scraps left from me cutting down frames. So I'm hoping to kind of fit my my shiplap looking white pieces with these frame pieces and kind of maybe luck up and match some lengths on those. Or maybe have to trim it a little bit. But this is definitely going to be a craft for me that is completely foam core scraps. I will let you know kind of what my measurements are if you want to do it exactly, but they're really going to be based on how this kind of rolls out. So the first thing I want to do is I want to bring these things back and tell you a little prep work that you can go ahead and start with. I went ahead and spray painted my haunted and my spooky. I spray painted them black, and I do have those to the side waiting to use. So let's go ahead and prep our ghost. In order to get this little ghost, all I did was kind of wiggle him off of there. It did snap off a little bit, and all I did was take my sanding block and sand kind of at a curve to kind of even his little bottom half out. I went ahead and sanded all the way around because you can have some rough edges sometimes on these little wooden pieces. You can kind of have some little, I don't know if I can get that close enough to see, but you get a much cleaner finish if you go ahead and just sand these down a little. I filled in the little hanging hole with some spackling and let it dry. And I've already started to sand that off so it's nice and flat. And I'm going to show you with this guy how I painted this to get kind of this vintagey looking ghost, not bright white like the other one I showed you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and show that. The only other thing I have is I cut out like a little circle of cardstock because I wanted the background of my ghost to have the black. I've got one for this little ghost, so he'll have a black background. Because we're going to be putting him on a white surface, I wanted his little spooky face to show. So the two paint colors that we're going to be needing, by the way, on the painting, I am going to show the ghost, but I'm not going to show the wood pieces. The faux wood tutorials are all their own thing. You can look and determine what color you want, and if you're doing like me and using scraps, just pull together whatever scraps you have. So paint-wise, I'm going to be using some of the Waverly Chalk and Plaster, which is, it is not quite as yellow as the ivory, and it's not as bright white as the white. So we're going to be painting him kind of this plaster color, and which isn't a whole lot different than its wood color. If you notice, this guy's already been painted. So all we're going to do is just give him one good coat of this white plaster, or this, it's barely just an off-white. I didn't want anything quite as yellow as the ivory. So, like I showed you, I went ahead and cheated and did this part because I wanted to be able to jump into this part. And this is Waverly Chalk in Mineral. And I don't need very much of this at all. Just going to pop it on here where I had painted my ghost. And I'm going to come in here with just a Dollar Tree makeup sponge. And if you watch me do the other ghost, you might have seen where they kind of had like a blue glow around them. This one, we're working on giving kind of that more vintage vibe, so I'm going with the Mineral. And I'm going to lightly coat this sponge. We're just going to take it. And you scrapbookers recognize what I'm doing right now. We usually call this inking, and we do it with stamp pads. But what it offers is almost an airbrush-like shadow around this ghost. Let me put it up against something white so you can see. And you can go as light or as dark with this as you want. You can really pull it in. You can see, let me blend that out a little. If you end up getting too much, just go back in with your plaster and add a little of that. I'm going a little heavy because this is really light at the moment. And I want you to be able to see, my other ghost is not this heavily done. But I'm never sure how it's going to appear when I do these kind of light shaded, shadowy looks. And you can see this is where I've gone heavier. This is where I kind of just edged it out. Okay, so I did that part. I'm just going to take some glue and pop the little black circle against the back. And this is, since this little ghost is wood, you can pretty much use whatever glue that you'd like to glue this little paper to the back side of him. I just used my hot glue because it was there, but you could use school glue, glue stick, whatever's going to stick to this little really porous wood surface. So that ghost is ready. For this guy, I just really did the same thing. I did him larger, and look how cute those look together. Oh, it's really cute with it peeking out from behind. Sidetrack. So those little guys are prepped. I have got my little words prepped. And I have kind of sort of got an idea of where I'm going with this. And I'm just going to play with these two scraps that I've got. And I'll tell you really quick what their sizes are. This one here is 12. by 14. And this one looks like it's about 14 by 14. And I'm not sure what I'm doing with this one yet, but I kind of know where I'm going with this little scrap. It did end up being one of my nicer pieces to do with my little groove thing. So I'm going to try and use this one. And now you can see really how this plaster color, why I went with this color, it really pops off that white. And I did want to use this background as being white. You'll see me do some of these with color. I just did an orange jack-o'-lantern that way, and it turned out really cute. So I'm just going to come in with all these little scraps, and we're going to try to match them out. I do not have them pre-measured, pre-anything. You're going to see exactly how I roll with it. And now you can see that is already looking pretty cute. For just, you know, you get 3 words in those metal packs. The ghost, and these are literally scraps that I had already. You can see that's why they're in such random lengths. And I'm just trying to find enough that will fit. And I'm not even going to miter these. I'm not going to go fancy. These are going to have a very rustic frame where it just kind of overlaps. And we're going to have a cute little matching set like this. So the next thing I'm going to do is just trim these down to fit on here and glue everything down. So let me go ahead and I'm going to get my little ghost in place. And you could do this bigger and do like I showed with the smaller ghost and do your whole little family representation, which would be pretty cute. Okay, I'm going to get all these glued together and then I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with the frame. Okay, so I've pretty much got everything glued down and I've started on my frame. I just started with the top and the bottom and found some pieces that matched out to that. I found some that are pretty close to this. This one's a little bit of a tight fit, but I'm going to make it work. And they're not even mitered. They're just kind of like old-fashioned frames. So I'm going to try to squeeze this one in place. You guys can see that it wasn't necessarily a perfect fit, but it sure was close enough for me. There we go. We have a nice, cute 3D piece. The only thing I have left to do now is I can come in with kind of my already grungy sponge and start doing my edges and having a really nice finished out piece. I'm not going to do that because I don't have protection on my hands. I want to jump into the next little guy. So I wanted to see if I can get this to fit, because this was one of the ones that I was not sure if I was going to oh, wait, no. Let me start with the little ghost. So, I have this, and I wanted to show both. So, I'm going to go ahead and use this piece. This was the one I did as an example to show you that you could just cut strips. These are just 1-inch strips applied to this. If you didn't have the groove tool. So, that's what I've got here. That makes this one a whole lot thicker and heftier. Which is fine for me because it's a smaller one, so it'll look cute. There'll be different dimensions to each one of these. I'm just going to come in here with my little finished ghost. I'm going to line him up. And I could have gone a little smaller with this. I could have gone a little bigger with this. I do like... in scrapbooking we call that the white space, you know, the blank area around him that makes him the kind of focal point here. So you kind of gauge what size you really want to end up with, and I'm just doing the same thing. I'm going through all of my little scraps here and I'm hoping to find enough scraps that'll fit and let me frame out this one. And I'm not going to do anything different with this one, as far as I'm just going to do the very old-fashioned style frame. The only difference that I may do with this piece, since it's already a chunky, bulky piece, depending on how many scraps I have, I may come in and double up on mine. So even his little frame is going to be a little chunkier. I'm not sure. I'll just have to see how that goes. But let me go ahead and get these glued down. Okay, so I found some pieces that worked pretty good. I've got them in place, and I'm just going to show you real quick. All I'm going to do is trim down, get it nice and smooth. Like I said, this was a craft that I was doing strictly out of scraps and pieces that I had. And as soon as I trim this all down, I'll tell you what the measurement on this little piece, it looks like it's about 8.5 is what this came out to be, which I think is a nice little size. And it's actually not even a bad size for a tier tray or something like that. The last thing to do for this one is, just like with any other piece, you're going to want to go in and paint across these edges so that from the sides and every other angle that it looks like you have just a nice solid wood frame. Now, I didn't end up going double layer on this so far, and I still may. It depends on how many scraps are left from what I'm working on. So here's where we're at so far, this cute little matching set. And I've got two options for the next one, and I'm going to sit here and play right along with you guys and show you which two I'm looking at to go with this. One is the spooky, and I'm still trying to work with scraps. So I have this scrap that I'm trying to work with, my spooky, and then I'm going to bring out one more piece that I'd already prepped, and I want to show you really quick. This is the Dollar Tree blank wood trick or treat, and you may notice that mine's a little different. I wanted the little pumpkins that were on here, the little jack-o'-lanterns. I used them for something else. So I just took my craft knife and gouged kind of out those little jack-o'-lanterns and ended up with just the lettering part, which I thought looked really nice on its own. I sanded everything really nice, especially where I cut. And then, if you look, I attached some of the Dollar Tree tumbling tower blocks, and they were a perfect alignment with the width of these letters, which was awesome. So now it looks like a much thicker, more dimensional piece. So I wanted to see if I could fit it on here and make it work on this piece. And if I could, then I'll come back and do something with this spooky later, because I did like this guy. And I could have put my spooky with my little baby ghost, but I kind of I really liked the font of the spooky, and I just wanted it on something by itself, to be honest. So you can see how nice this whole set would be together, and it almost looks like I really could. I've accidentally gotten paint on this one, and I was trying to find a way of hiding it. And I may not even worry about it, because if I can get this framed out, it's a good possibility that that won't even be noticed. But like I said, this piece right here was 14 by 14. It looks like it's going to be a nice size. My little scraps are only 1 inch wide. So I'll have very, very little to spare. And I might actually have to pop off the edge here a little bit just to kind of make me visually happy. But I think this is where I want to go with this one, and I really wanted to use this piece. So I have my whole frame glued together. I've got a little glue stringies here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put glue on each of these little kind of attachment points now, where I've put my towering, tumbling blocks there. And hopefully I will be able to get this laid down before all of these little spots draw on me, because I'm going to try to get my glue strings off before I get it laid down. So I turned my little shiplap look kind of, I turned it the other direction. Instead of going horizontally, this time I have it vertically, just for a little visual difference versus the other two pieces. And I'm going to slide them down. I wanted you to see that I went ahead and painted my sides so that, or got my first coat of paint on my sides. You can see where it looks more like a solid piece. And I'm going to try to scoot out. The only one I have not gotten to yet, and I'm still going to try to get in this video, is my little spooky friend. And I pulled out a couple scraps for that, but I want you to see where we're kind of at the moment. Whoops. Hands in the way, I'm sorry. So here's our full set so far. I'm loving these, absolutely loving these. I did a Kirkland's inspired piece, and I have not loaded that video because I was going to do all three of these pieces that came from this Kirkland's inspiration, and ultimately I decided that I wanted these pieces to go with it instead. So you'll see all of these at some point from me. So I'm going to pull these to the side and show you what I'm going to try to do with my little spooky. I've got a couple other pieces that I grabbed here. These were really, they were not great at all on my practice, but I'm hoping maybe it really won't be that noticeable. So I'm just going to try to cut a section off of this one that I can use for my spooky. And in order to cut this after you have used that groove tool on it, you would cut it just like you would a normal piece. So you're just going to take your blade or whatever method you're currently using for cutting. Right now I'm just going to use my straight blade. I know some of you have gotten your hands on the big mat cutter. I'm not even measuring what this is. I'm just looking at where it's still halfway decent little grooves. And I'm just going to cut across it just like I would any other piece of foam core, and you see it still cuts nicely, and you can kind of see where those grooves are. So I'm really digging the groove tool. I will say that it is going to take a lot more experience with it to really master it. There are times where it cuts beautifully, and there are times where you do get those poor cuts, and I'm still not entirely sure how to get a more consistent cut with it. So I still am working on that and practicing more and more with that. And here I am again, my little 1-inch scrap strips. I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to find some strips that happen to fit this. And it's funny, those are pretty close. Other than needing a little trim, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to frame this out. And this is going to give me a fourth piece just out of the few smaller Dollar Tree pieces that I showed you. All of us tend to kind of gravitate towards those pieces, and then once we get them, it can turn into a braid-free scenario. You've got all these small pieces and wanting to do something with them. So I'm going to cut these down just like I have everything else. Okay, so I just had a little bit of overhang. I trimmed it off. That was about it. I've gotten everything kind of glued down and drying. And I'm going to tell you really quick, to fit with this spooky word, this sizing, it ended up being about 12.5 by 6. And you saw everything that I was doing really was just using scraps, pieces that I had, fitting them to the pieces from Dollar Tree that I wanted to use. And how cute would this grouping be for a wall shelf? There's almost no weight involved. I still need to finish off the sides, and you can see the difference in finishing off the sides and not finishing it. So you can kind of see that. I still have some touch up to do on all of these, but on a shelf, anything like that, this is so lightweight. It's every single one of these would just take a single command strip. You could totally do it as wall art. It's going to be really lightweight on your fireplace mantle. The smaller ones are light enough to work for a tier tray. They're all so lightweight, but so super cute to me. And if you're a bow person, because I know a lot of you guys are, it absolutely would be adorable if you have little girls and you wanted to do like a black and white buffalo check little bow on one of your ghosties. If you want to throw bows in for people that are, I love bows, but I live in a house full of guys, so it's real hard for me to justify bows on everything. But for those of you that can really put the bows, be sure to do that. For those of us that can't really get away with it as easy. But hopefully I'm going to try to move everything out manually here so that you guys can kind of see these. Okay, I tried to zoom this out as far as I could get everything. But here's the full set. It's a pretty good size set. I did have to pan out a little to get it all out for you guys. I hope you liked it. I think it's cute. I happen to like words, though. I know a lot of people are over all of the word art. I'm still a big fan, especially as an old school scrapbooker. So I love these pieces, especially kind of the simplicity of them. And maybe they gave you an idea of maybe not these pieces, but some of these types of pieces that we all tend to get from the Dollar Tree. So maybe it'll give you an idea on a thing or two to do. And if you do try something like this with one of these pieces, be sure to hop over to the Peppermint Cactus Facebook page and share it. There's so much inspiration there, and I look forward to seeing it all the time. And it's worth checking out just for inspiration alone, especially it's really rolling into holiday crafting season from fall all the way to Christmas. So there's going to be so many awesome things posted. I just know it. I've already seen so many awesome things. So pop over there, join in, and check out what's going on and share the projects that you do. And I hope to get to craft with you guys soon.